Thanks for joining us on this Saturday morning. I'm really pleased to have with us today a wonderful resource. We have Matt Musico from Collegewise. Matt is joining us to talk about how to choose the right college for you. Matt has a lot of experience working with college admissions. He used to be working in the admissions office at Sacred Heart University, which is his alma mater, I believe. And so he's read thousands of college applications. And he's also an avid sports writer, I learned by reading his bio. So he has a lot of writing experience. And he's going to share some really great tips with all of us today on how to choose the right college, how to do virtual tours. So let's listen, and I'm going to hand it over to Matt. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. And thank you all of you for sacrificing some time on your Saturday morning, which I know is a very precious time of the weekend. So I really appreciate that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen this way because I have a little PowerPoint as well. So let me do that. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. If not, just please say so. But like Sarah said, my name is Matt Musico. I'm one of the 3 Collegewise counselors in our Westport office right on Post Road. And I want to just give you a quick overview of the things that we're going to be talking about. Similar to what Sarah just said, I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about us as Collegewise as a company, and then myself as well. And then talk about, a big overarching strategy about finding the right schools for you and for your child. And then different strategies to help find that fit and what exactly that means. And then also how you can get help. And especially with these times, more than anything else, being able to figure out how to do some thoughtful college research without being able to, at least in most cases, being able to go and physically visit a school. So for those who aren't too familiar with Collegewise, we're the nation's largest college admissions company. We do exactly what it sounds like. We help students and families. We help usher them through the college admission experience at all different stages, because everyone comes to us at a different stage, at a different point in time. But the most common one is that someone will start with us at the very beginning, say, we know we want to go to college. We have some ideas about what that looks like, but we really need some help kind of just getting through the process from start to finish. And we've been lucky enough since we've been founded in 1999 to help more than 20,000 people find the best fit college for themselves. As Sarah said, a few of the things about myself: I did attend Sacred Heart University as an undergraduate, and I enjoyed my time so much there, I didn't actually want to leave, which, as anyone who's gone to college knows, that's a pretty common theme amongst college seniors and graduating seniors. And while I did graduate, which is a good thing, I didn't actually have to leave campus because I then spent about 3.5 years in the undergrad admissions office. I read more than 4,000 applications during my time as an admissions counselor, so I got a really good sense of what makes a really good application and essay and all different pieces of it, and what makes a not so good application essay and different pieces of it as well. As a part of, I had a few different responsibilities in the admissions office at Sacred Heart, and I ended up overseeing the recruitment for the incoming freshmen within the state of New York. I was also the admissions liaison for our Division I athletics department, our club sports athletic department, and also our college of business too. So before we start talking about fit, I wanted to just start off with this kind of general chart. And I'm sharing this fully knowing and expecting this to change slightly because of COVID, obviously, because everything we're going to be talking about is going to have a different, kind of like a COVID slant, unfortunately, just because that's the time of life that we're living in right now. But when we're not in the middle of a global pandemic, it seems as if every single spring, the news outlets all kind of say the same thing. Acceptance rates at the country's most prestigious colleges are continuing to drop year after year, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to get into college. And they make it sound as if students have to be perfect to get in. They need a 4.0 GPA, perfect test scores, laundry list of extracurricular activities, along with a laundry list of APs and honors courses and things like that they've taken throughout their high school career. And even then, after doing all those things and being quote unquote perfect on paper, you're still not going to get in. And that's the kind of fear mongering that really grinds our gears as college counselors, because you can see from this pie chart, even though it's probably most likely going to shift a little bit, The bad news that we only really hear about throughout the news and stuff like that is technically true, but it's only true for this tiny, tiny sliver, that tiny red sliver of colleges in this pie chart here. And those colleges are the ones that are accepting less than 20% of the applicants that submit applications there. And they're all places that you've likely heard of. Places like Yale, Stanford, Harvard, MIT, University of Chicago, UCLA, places like that. So this bad news is true, but it's only true for about the 40 or 50 most highly selective schools in the country. And there are more than 2,000 four-year schools in the United States. What a lot of people don't actually end up talking about is that the vast majority of schools in this country actually accept at least half or more of the students who submit an application to their particular institution. So I'm starting this off not necessarily to say, you know, if a student has their sights set on a certain highly selective school, that they should be setting their sights lower. That's actually the opposite of what I'm saying. I always tell students that this is the one point in your life where you're going to have the opportunity to actually submit an application to your dream school. And if one of those highly selective schools is a dream school of yours, then yes, that should absolutely be one of the schools on your list. But when it comes to these highly selective schools, you can't have a list of, let's say, hypothetically 12 schools. You can't have 10 of those highly selective schools on your list. Even the most high achieving student has to have at least a handful of realistic options on their plate by the time they're ready to submit an application. Just because these highly selective schools, regardless of how good a student is on paper, how great of a candidate they are on paper and in person, it's really a lottery ticket. And that's really what I talk about lots of times with my students too. So every single student, especially by the time you get to second semester senior year, when you get all of your admissions decisions and you get to lay them out on the table, students have worked way too hard by that point to not have at least a number of options to choose from. So having a balanced list is really crucial. And when we talk about having a balanced list, I always work with my students by saying, look, there are 3 different buckets we're going to fill up here: reaches, targets, and safeties. Just because a school is a reach doesn't mean you should discount it. But again, the entire list can't be reaches, because we need to be able to have some kind of a balance in here. So ideally, what I try and strike with regard to balance for my students is to have about 1/3 of their list, 1/3 to maybe half of their list with reaches, depending on what kind of student or what kind of schools that they're aiming for, and have at least half, and ideally 2/3 of their list be full of schools where they have at least a decent shot at gaining an acceptance, meaning, you know, at least 2/3 of the list is full of targets and safeties. And it's not as if we're filling up their list with schools that they don't really like. The whole point is to be able to find schools that they're genuinely excited about and they really like for a number of different reasons. And if their universe only consisted of maybe the 2 safeties that they apply to, they'd be super excited and happy to select one of those schools to enroll into for the upcoming fall. So I'm saying this before we kind of hop into this idea of finding the right college and getting the right fit college for you, because there are really 2 things that I want to point out here. These highly selective schools they're wonderful schools, and they do a lot of great things, and there are a lot of successful people that come out of there, but they don't have the market cornered on happy and successful graduates. And they also aren't the only ones that are supplying a great college experience too. It's a very personal kind of thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, because it's really comes down to exactly what the student or family is really looking to get out of their college experience too. Okay, so finding the right schools for you. When I start working with students, it usually takes a little bit of time to really wrap their head around what exactly this means. Mostly because of the surrounding environment. And I feel like I see this a lot in my 2 coworkers in Westport. We see this a lot within the Westport community too. It's usually because as teenagers, it seems as if once you get towards like 14, 15, 16 years old, they get the same 2 questions from literally everybody they know, or even people that they don't know. Immediate family, extended family at holidays, friends, maybe even teachers, maybe even the person like the cashier person at Trader Joe's. The 2 questions that teenagers always seem to get are, where do you want to go to college, and what do you want to study? Those in themselves are already intimidating questions, even if you feel like you know the answer to those questions. And most of the time, I feel like, especially earlier on in their high school career, when they start getting asked those questions, high schoolers have no idea what the answer is to those. At least one, maybe even both. And even though that's actually a normal response to have, and I don't know, for some big questions like that, people ask those questions to these teenagers expecting an answer, which is really not fair. And it really just adds more stress to it. And even if they do know the answer to one or two of those questions, or they say maybe like a small college that they're really interested in that it maybe isn't too well known, as say like a Yale or a UConn or Iona or Sacred Heart or schools like that, especially around here. Instead of having like the follow-up question being like excited and asking more about it, they usually will follow up with a question like, well, why are you interested in that school? Because I've never heard of that, so it can't be that great of a school. Why don't you focus on getting into a quote unquote better school, whatever that actually means. So it's really easy for teenagers to feel the pressure of getting into the quote unquote best school, or really most selective school that they can, instead of focusing exactly on what makes the most sense for them and their needs and wants and desires too. So as you can see here on this slide, there are certainly many benefits of finding the best school for a student, for themselves. And the key is really finding out what that school is involved with, and starting the process of really researching schools and figuring out exactly what they like and what they don't like kind of earlier on in their high school career. And that's not necessarily to say that students as freshmen should be furiously researching and revisiting colleges when we're able to do that again as a freshman necessarily, but it's good if they're feeling as if college is going to be in their future. That's something that they feel like they're currently aspiring to get to upon graduation from high school. It's a good idea just to take stock in, what they feel like they want right now, or just kind of like looking around, just seeing what's available out there. It's obviously a little bit easier if they have an older sibling going through the process, so they kind of get a little bit of bird's eye view. But if they're the first one going through, they're kind of like flying blind a little bit, especially when it's earlier on. And when they take a look and see what's out there, and maybe do like some super light research just to kind of get exposed to it. And you want to make sure that the students are remembering, hey, you're probably going to change your mind over what you want, and that's totally okay. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute, actually. So it's really important to go through some self-evaluation, just because there are many people in your life, in a student's life, that knows them very well, whether it be parents, siblings, friends, guidance counselors, maybe certain teachers as well, or coaches, but nobody knows the student better than themselves. And I know that the next question, when I say something like that to a student, usually they'll say, well, I don't really know exactly what I want just yet, or really who I am yet. I'm still trying to figure that out, because they're really young, obviously. And that's okay, especially if they're starting the process a little bit earlier on in high school. But what's really important is to ask questions about the general types of college campus environments that are out there. So as you can see in this slide here, kind of break it down as simple as possible, really just by talking about big schools versus small schools. And there are really a number of different questions you can ask yourself. And there's no set group of like 10 questions or 15 questions that you need to ask yourself, because it's going to be a little bit different for everybody too. I remember I worked with a senior this past year who thankfully got into the school that she applied to via early decision in the fall. And I had worked with her for a couple of years. We started working together during the second semester of her sophomore year. And when we first started working together, she had mentioned that she didn't want too big of a school, but she still wanted a school that had a ton of school spirit. And she was really focused on a handful of like specific geographic areas. And she was very particular, which I appreciated, because she felt like she knew what she wanted. And I felt like I found a handful of schools that checked all the boxes for her, but for whatever reason, they just weren't floating her boat. It wasn't doing it for her. So we still had a handful of schools that we felt as if were a good fit for her, and that she at least liked at the first stage of the research process. And during I think it was the middle of junior year, she just went on a whim with her dad to go visit Syracuse University, even though we already had researched that school, and she already like kind of dismissed it because it was too big. I don't know what made her feel like she wanted to go and actually take a look at it. But she went there to take a look and take a tour, and she ended up loving it. And she came back and told me about it, and we ended up being able to open up a much wider net for her specific college search, because she realized, oh, you know what, bigger schools are actually okay for me. I feel like I'll actually be all right in that kind of environment and size of a school. And while she really enjoyed Syracuse University, she ended up loving Boston University, which is actually slightly bigger than Syracuse, and that's where she enrolled for the upcoming fall. Hopefully she'll be there in person, but in some capacity, but we'll see exactly how that happens. You know, the point I'm trying to make here specifically is that, you know, lots of students will walk into my office and feel like they need to know the answers right away to all the questions that I ask. And my biggest dad joke that I usually tell them is that, look, this is a judgment-free zone. This is Planet Fitness in here. Like there's no judgment over whether you feel like you know something or you feel like you don't know something. Feel empowered if you don't know an answer to a question to say, I don't know. Or if you answer that question maybe a few months before and it's changed over time, feel empowered to say, look, you know, I've changed my mind. I feel like I'm liking this a little bit more than I used to before, because they're teenagers. Teenagers change their mind like every 10 seconds, and who they are today, especially for, you know, the parents of students on this call, who they are today is going to be different 2 months from now, 6 months from now, even a year from now, depending on what exactly is going on in their life. And that's okay. You know, a lot of people try to resist that and resist the change and things like that, but you want to embrace it because it's all part of growing up, really. Okay, and then thinking about the environment that you want to experience. So I just spent some time talking about the campus environment and the experience that goes into it, but it obviously goes a little bit deeper than that. It was pretty general from what I had mentioned. But the environment that we're talking about here can include things like the size of the school, distance from home, geographic location, the mood of the school, which I'll get to in a minute, and also even the makeup of the undergraduate student body as well too. I'm working with a rising senior at this point, and we actually started working together during, I think it was the middle of her freshman year. So we've been working together for a little while now. And literally from the first moment I met her, it took me probably about 5 minutes to realize two things about her. She was super interested in computer science, and she wanted to play soccer in college. And in addition to those two things, she was also hyper-focused on trying to get into the most selective school that she possibly could. Even as a freshman, she was already thinking about that. But like I said just before, you're all these students, high school students, are teenagers. She's a teenager, and it's a common thing to change your mind as you go on. As you gain more wisdom and experience and information as we kind of go through this process. It's kind of like a process of self-discovery, really. And that's really what happened with this particular student. And I like this example in contrast to the one that I shared with you about my graduating senior that's going to Boston University, because this particular student changed their mind without doing any in-person visits. She was just doing some thoughtful online research. When we first started doing some light college research a few months ago, we already had a long list of schools that she was thinking about purely for soccer. So I decided to do a little bit of an experiment and let her just choose 5 schools that she wanted to research for homework. And typically I'm the one that suggests schools to them, but I always obviously leave it open to them to be able to add on any schools that they find interesting when they're doing their research. But I just, in this instance, I just left it all up to the student. And she came back with schools that I wasn't surprised that she was going to pick. She picked some of the most highly selective schools in the country, like MIT, Carnegie Mellon, University of Michigan, and Caltech, especially selective with regard to computer science. So she went and did her homework. We came back for our next meeting. We talked about it. And then I decided to let her pick 5 more again on her own. And while she still had some highly selective schools that she ended up deciding to choose, a handful of different kinds of schools that I wasn't actually expecting ended up on her list that were still had highly regarded computer science programs and soccer teams that she was looking for, but not as selective as, say, like an MIT, who has lower than a 10% acceptance rate. And what she told me, I asked her about it because it immediately jumped out at me. And she said that as she was going forward and doing her research, especially that first round, she really got an idea of the rigorous academic climate at those colleges. And it seems as if it was a little bit more competitive than she was looking for. And that really wasn't too attractive to her, with people just only focusing on academics 24/7. It didn't seem like she didn't get that vibe that she was going to be able to like really enjoy her college experience. Not that she didn't want to be challenged, but she just wanted maybe a little bit more of a balance. And she was able to do that. We started doing her research after COVID hit, when lockdown started. So she wasn't able to get out of the house and go look at anything. And she just did some thoughtful research online via a few different resources, which I'll talk about, and also doing some virtual visits too, as well. So again, this really all just goes to goes to the student knowing themselves and what they like and what they don't like, and also evaluating their needs, wants, and desires, with the caveat knowing that they're probably going to change their mind along the way, and just giving themselves a little bit of grace to be able to do that too. The next strategy here, don't let majors decide everything. And this kind of helps circle back to the start of this presentation, because there are a number of students that I work with that feel like they know what they want to study when they get to college, which is great. And it really helps it helps us focus a little bit more when we're trying to find, source a handful of schools to start researching. But really, those students who feel like they know exactly what they want to do are actually in the minority, even though it feels like there's always this inherent pressure from outside sources to have students try and pick a major before they get off to school. And it's, I hate it when people feel like that they have to do that, because as much as about 50% of incoming freshmen each year across the country will start their college careers being an undecided student. And the numbers tell us that whenever you walk onto a college campus and you see a group of 4 students together, chances are 3 out of those 4 change their major at least once during their 4 years, during their 4-year college career. So we're coming back to this idea that it's totally okay to change your mind along the way. And college is totally about exploring things and finding out who you are and exactly what you like and what you want to do with the rest of your life. Because it's really intimidating for a 16-year-old to try and pinpoint themselves into one specific major field of study. And thinking about, okay, like, yeah, I think I can do this for the next 40 years, not knowing how they're going to feel about it next year, let alone 30 years from now too. I'm working with a current rising senior who is probably going to be applying undecided this fall, but we've talked about majors a handful of times, and he has ended up pretty much focusing on 3 different types of majors that he feels are most interesting to him right now. And it's a pretty wide range on the spectrum. He is interested in like bio pre-med track. He's also interested in engineering, and he's also interested in business. And so whenever him and I talk about it, you can tell he always has this look where he's like a little disappointed in himself that he hasn't really figured it out just yet. But I always remind him that he doesn't have to know right now. It's better that he doesn't know. But it's good that he at least has an idea of things that get him excited. When I do major research with students that are going through a Collegewise program, the goal is not for us to pinpoint one major that they want to be able to put on their application. Sometimes that happens. It's just a student will stumble upon a major that they feel like is just perfect for them, and that's great. But really the goal of us doing major research with students is just to kind of expand their horizons a little bit and just know what's out there. Because if they have an idea of maybe like 2, 3, 4, or maybe even more majors that they feel like they could be interested in, that'll at least help us know that we need to find some schools that at least have those options available to them too. And when it comes to majors and things like that, what's really important, especially for the people who feel like they know exactly what they want to do, I feel like I run into the most students who feel like they know exactly what they want to do, whether it be in like health professions like physical therapy, nursing, the medical field, or business. It seems like those students are typically the ones that are pretty steadfast in what they want to do. So if, say, for instance, a student is interested in studying in marketing, like it's really good to know that UConn has a marketing program within their business program. But it needs to go, the research within that major needs to go a little bit deeper. Like what kind of classes will the student have to take in that particular program? Do they get to take any other business courses too? Like, do they get to take a business core group of classes along with a common core group of classes? What kind of out of classroom experiences are available to them? What kind of internships are available? What kind of jobs do graduates get after they leave college? Or how many of those graduates actually go back to grad school right away and get their MBA? The questions that a student will ask themselves with regard to this specific subject of majors is going to be different for everybody because it depends on what they're looking for. What's most important is that while they have like a handful of schools that all have the same major, it's important to know how that major is administered, because it can be slightly different from school to school. How UConn administers their marketing major is probably going to be different than how Sacred Heart University does it. And depending on those differences may help alter the student's opinion on what they like and what they don't like about that school specifically. Okay, the next strategy, if a student wants more financial aid or a family wants more financial aid, you want to apply to schools that are most likely to accept you. And it sounds pretty simple. And obviously the financial part of heading to college is always relevant and important. But with COVID basically turning everything on its head, not just and creating a bunch of uncertainty, not just for families, but also colleges too, it's more relevant and important than ever at this point. When I'm working with students, I'm building that balanced college list. Like I said before, the goal is to have about 2/3 of that list contain colleges where they at least have a decent shot at gaining acceptance to that particular institution. If a student applies to schools that aren't as selective as some of the others on their particular lists, and they stand out amongst, say, like the upper half or upper third or quarter of the applicant pool at that particular school, they're not only more likely to get accepted, obviously, but schools will feel a little bit more compelled to convince them that they should be an enrolled student at their particular institution. So hypothetically speaking, and knowing that this may change a little bit, and just with regard to the types of financial stress that a lot of colleges have gone under, but hypothetically speaking, there's a better chance at getting a more attractive financial aid package at the end of the day for a student who applies to maybe a less selective school, and they kind of stand out as one of the top applicants as well too. Of course, I've been going through a number of strategies to help you think about finding the right college for you, which means that the financial aspect is just one piece of it. I think it's obviously a very, very important piece because it's kind of like one of the major pillars of this experience, and it should be considered and talked about with amongst each family in great detail because it is very important. But I also want my students to not just think about finances. I want them to be super excited about all the schools on the list, and that they'd be eager to attend any single one of them that they get accepted to. But they just so happen are able to afford it as well. So I always make sure that I keep the finances in the back of my mind when I'm talking to students. But I also have to remind them, don't look at this school just because it's super affordable. You need to also be able to like it too, because there are plenty of schools out there that are also going to be super affordable. And I'd rather a student go to one that they really love and have a great time at and also be able to afford it instead of going to one that they can afford, but they end up hating it too. This sounds a little cheesy, but as part of the final strategy, it all comes back to the simple question, why? And talking about what you do in college is more important than where you do it. If there's a certain college that is in a student's sights, why is it there? Why is it so important to them? Why do they want to be a part of their future so badly? There are no wrong answers to questions like these and any other questions like that a student will ask themselves, as long as they're honest with themselves and know that there is plenty of work ahead. Getting a marketing degree is a terrific thing to do. It's super applicable within the marketplace upon graduation. But if they don't spend time learning more about marketing outside of the classroom in like a real life setting, whether it be internships or part-time jobs or any other types of opportunities that are at a particular school that they go to, it will probably be hard to get a full-time job in marketing upon graduation too. When there isn't a global pandemic going on, this time of year, this time of year is typically more exciting for incoming college freshmen, but the springtime is also much more exciting because they're getting their final decisions. Most of the time, they're actually visiting schools for the final time before they make their final decision prior to May 1st. It's fun for me because there are a number of students who end up getting into their dream schools, maybe that they weren't expecting to get into. And it's also disappointing because there are a number of students who don't get the news that they're hoping for. And feeling elated about getting into a dream school and feeling crushed about not getting into their dream school or a school that they really want to go to is totally appropriate. But I make sure that I remind all of my students, and especially the ones who get into their dream school, that while the college admission experience is over at this point, you've applied already, you got accepted, you got your financial aid package, and you've enrolled, the work is just beginning because you still have to go to school for 4 years and work really hard to get that piece of paper saying that you're a college graduate. Like going to a school like Yale is a wonderful opportunity, and there are many opportunities there to help a student be successful upon graduation. But the thing is that if they're just act like a robot, go to class, go back to the dorm room, do homework, shower, go to sleep, rinse and repeat the next day, for 4 years, it's going to be hard to really get the value that a school like that brings to the table. So tools for the search. This is probably like,
I think we lost Matt. Let's see if he comes back. Oh, he's back.
all right. I have no idea what happened there, so I'm sorry. Right when I was supposed to give you like all the good stuff too. So let me reshare my screen. Obviously talking through all these strategies, it's important to be able to have the tools to be able to evaluate all these different strategies that we have. So I wanted to be able to share some of those tools with you, and also be able to talk about more that I can send afterwards too. With COVID, and obviously it's thankfully not so bad in Connecticut compared to the rest of the country, but it still doesn't make it easy to like go and visit colleges and do things like that, and really get a good sense of, you know, what a student feels like they like and don't like in the college process. So they only really have their laptop as their biggest college search tool. So there are a number of things here that I listed that students can use. The College Board's Big Future site, I really like, especially for the very beginning of the search, when you're trying to like cast that net and see what's out there just based off some general criteria. It allows the students to be able to just like punch in a bunch of different things that they're thinking about with regard to like how selective the school is, test requirements, if that's something that's important to the student, but then also like geographical location, bunch of you could list a bunch of majors, sports if they're a potential athlete, you know, the size of the school, if they wanted to be urban, suburban, or rural, like all those kinds of things. So there are a bunch of different characteristics that they can punch into. And then what's great about this tool is that it ends up, once it gets all the things and it starts to search, it just brings you a big list of schools that hits all that criteria based on how important it is to the student. The FISC guide to colleges, that's if you get this in its physical form, it's one of those huge college books that probably is better used as a doorstop than anything else. But I also believe there are some digital copies of the FISC guide, and I like the FISC guide because it just takes each school and gives you like a 2 to 3 page overarching summary about different aspects of it. So students really get a good like 30,000 foot view of what a school potentially has to offer, and they can kind of get a sense of exactly if they feel like they would like it enough to actually research a little bit more. It's actually one of the first things that I ask my students to do, to read online before they really dive into college research too. Student review college info, niche.com and unigo.com. I usually equate these to Yelp for colleges or Amazon reviews for colleges, because if you look up any school on either of these sites, it gives you all different aspects of a school, and it focuses on student-based reviews, current students, and also usually young alumni as well too. And it allows you to kind of see how they rate certain things, and also just kind of like open reviews about different types of subjects as well. I really like these two sites just because, you know, their students are able to get kind of a sense of what the life is currently like on that particular campus. But it also tell them, you know, I want you to form your own opinions about schools that you're researching, which means, you know, if you read something that's really exciting or really concerning, like that's awesome. But you know, if something is really concerning, I don't want you to dismiss it because of one person's experience. As we all know, even at the best of colleges, not everyone has the same experience, and not everyone has a great experience. It's not, even at a dream school, it's not always sunshine and rainbows every single day. So it's important information to have and store in the back of your mind, and be able to ask questions when it becomes necessary. But I always want them to make sure that they're forming their own opinions off of the things that they read. And visiting colleges virtually, this has obviously become a lot more important since colleges have closed down in the physical sense. And it was a lot harder in the springtime because, like everybody else, colleges were scrambling around trying to figure out exactly how to bolster up their virtual visiting opportunities and things like that. But now, especially with probably the likelihood of most colleges probably not going back in person fully, there may be some like hybrid and mostly online things. as they figure out what they want to do with their enrolled students, that's when, you know, they'll be able to turn their focus on what they want to do about prospective students as well. But until then, many schools have probably ramped up the creativeness in their virtual visit opportunities, and things here like Campus Reel and UVisit, they're specific websites that are dedicated to virtual campus tours, which are great options. And then obviously YouTube is always a great option. Their own college websites, they've had to build out this area of their website a lot more than they probably ever thought they would ever have to. So it's good to check that out too. And then my colleague, Amy Chatterjee, always jokes that her favorite college website is Google, because literally they store the world's information. So you can find everything there. So even if you want to just bypass Campus Reel and UVisit and you want to just search for virtual tours on Google, all you have to do is just type in like Sacred Heart University virtual tour, and you'll see a bunch of different options, probably a mix of official and unofficial things that pop up, but you'll be able to see a bunch of different things. And what I'll do towards the end, I'll throw a link in the chat box for you to submit your email address if you want it. There was somebody else earlier in the springtime, another independent college counselor that had a group of people help compile this big, huge, long list of, I think, like 600 plus colleges, and kind of detail what kind of virtual visit opportunities they have and the links to those visit opportunities, which has been a really, really good resource for lots of my students, just being able to cut down on the searching. You know, they just go to this big page and they're just able to search for their school that they're looking for and be able to see, all right, do they have a Campus Reel video that they can look at? Do they have a UVisit video that they can look at, or university video that they can look at? So I'll share that towards the end as we're taking questions and stuff. And if you would like me to email to you afterwards, just go ahead and fill out the information and submit it, and I'll send it to you guys probably early next week. Just a handful of things to remember here before I open it up for questions. You know, the real challenge isn't getting into a quote unquote good college, because everyone's definition for what a good college means is going to be different. You know, what a good college is exactly, you know, what it has to offer you and what you're excited about it. You know, if you approach this college process with the goal of finding the right schools for you, you'll have more success getting in. If you kind of lead this way with thinking of it in a more authentic manner, this experience is going to go a lot smoother, I think. And there will be parts where it is stressful, because it is stressful. But if you're shifting the focus off of just trying to get into the quote unquote best school that you can get into and shifting it to looking at, okay, what do I want in a school, and where can I find those kind of characteristics in certain schools based off of the certain criteria that I'm looking for. I think lots of times, especially when we're thinking about applying to schools, excuse me, applying to schools and having colleges be in charge of whether you get accepted or not, you feel kind of powerless and you're kind of like a little bit out of control. So it's really important to remember, especially for students, that, you know, colleges aren't in charge of your destiny for the next 4 years. You're in charge. And I know for many students, I know I certainly fell into this bucket, that it was the most important and most impactful decision I had made in my life up to that point. While I do wish I was a little bit more thoughtful throughout the process, you know, 2020 hindsight right there, I am certainly happy with where I ended up at Sacred Heart and the experience that I had. And also knowing that, you know, going to Sacred Heart changed the trajectory of my life. And I look around what I have today and what I'm able to do today, and it's all a result of that decision that I made. And even now, 10, 15 years after I was even there, I still look at my degree and I'm super happy that I went there because of everything that I was able to get out of it and everything that I've continued to be able to get out of it too. So all the students that I work with or just come into contact with, I want them to be able to have that kind of experience, because as all of us that have been to college know, it's an amazing 4 years. And it's even more amazing when you find the school that you're looking for that really fits all the needs that you have as well. So I'll stop sharing my screen so I can grab that link that I was talking about. And I do want to open it up to questions, because I know Sarah was hopefully looking at the chat box for me. I haven't looked at it at all. But I'm happy to answer any questions about this particular topic, or just anything about the college experience, college admissions and things like that, testing, So please feel free to either throw something in the chat box, because I'm now looking at it, or just unmute yourself and ask the question.
And I also want to mention very quickly that the library also has some of the resources that Matt mentioned. We have the FISC guide. We also have an entire web page devoted to college resources. So I hope you'll all check it out. It's marktwainlibrary.org, and it's under teen programs. So check that out. We have, I think, some of the same virtual tour options that Matt discussed.
If anyone has any questions after the fact, please feel free to email me. My email address is just mattm at collegewise.com. And I know that I saw that you were recording, Sarah, so that's good just to have it available. But if anyone wants, again, like I said, that big, long virtual visit resource sheet that I mentioned, or if you just want a copy of the slideshow too, happy to send it over. All you have to do is just ask. I'm happy to do so.
And Matt, quick question. Is that list on Collegewise's website as well? The
virtual visit site?
Yeah.
No, it is not, because we weren't the ones that made it. A couple of our counselors helped, but it was somebody that was outside the company. So it's like an Excel sheet. So it's kind of weird to put on the website.
Understood.
I do see a question here from Chris. How will SAT and ACT requirements continue to evolve? How do you see COVID affecting admissions? Well, two very good questions. For the first half for SAT and ACT, I think especially because I think yesterday I saw an article saying that I think there were two students contracted COVID while taking the ACT in Oklahoma recently too. So like now we're seeing, even for the ones who are not getting canceled, the sittings, now it's obviously a risk. I think how it's going to continue to evolve is that I feel like every day since probably the beginning of April, when we realized that this wasn't going to go away for a while, colleges started going test optional, just saying that it wasn't a requirement to submit their test scores. And there's been a laundry list of colleges that have done that since, especially some highly selective ones like Yale and Brown and all those, and like all the Ivies and many others as well too. So I think it's going to continue to evolve, especially for the class of 2021, just trying to be as flexible as possible, because we have no idea when they're actually going to be able to sit down and actually take an official test again. So it's really, it's not fair to them to continue to require it. So how the colleges go about that will all probably be a little bit different. There'll be some schools that just say, look, you can submit it if you want, but if you don't, it will not hurt you in the process. Other colleges, like I know University of Michigan has adopted a test flexible policy where, if you don't have an official sitting, they would be happy to take a PSAT or a PACT or like any other types of testing that they have. Like some schools will also say, if you don't want to submit these standardized tests, if you have a couple of AP scores that you want to submit, that's fine too. We'll consider that as well. So there'll be some flexibility with that. And then there are some other schools who would also ask for something else in lieu of submitting a SAT or ACT test. So like I think University of Miami is one that I heard that is doing this, where they're not requiring standardized tests, but if you don't submit something, they're just asking you for to answer another short answer question within the application, which is not a huge deal, obviously. So I think we're going to continue to evolve to hopefully have the vast majority of them, if not all of them, go test optional, because it's really the right thing to do. And hopefully, depending on how long this is going to continue to drag on throughout the United States, hopefully they'll also think about, or at least for the schools who've only adopted a test optional policy for this upcoming year, they'll think for the next year too, for the class of 2022, because it's also impacting them. And how do I see COVID affecting admissions? I think for a lot of them, they're going to have to get a little less selective, especially for the ones who, for those like top 40 or 50 selective schools that I mentioned at the very beginning, they may not have to get too much less selective, but I think a lot of the schools, pretty much everyone else that's beyond that, it's a little less selective. They're probably going to have to dip a little bit deeper than they probably would have in a normal circumstance, just because if we're thinking about the financial ramifications of it, because lots of schools dealt with probably some lost tuition, some people that have decided to not go back for the following year, and they need to fill their class because all admissions offices have a budget goal. And I like to equate admissions to really just one big backwards math problem. Like if you want to use some round numbers, like when I was at Sacred Heart, we always aimed for about 1,000 students in the incoming freshman class each year. And when we looked at our historical yield rate, which is basically the percentage of accepted students who decided to enroll, we knew that we had to have so many acceptances. So if our yield rate was 25% and we wanted 1,000 students in the fall, we knew we had to have about 4,000 acceptances. And if we wanted to keep a certain acceptance rate, we had to generate so many applications. And to generate those applications, we had to generate so many prospects too in our system. So I think that colleges are probably going to be a little bit less selective, and especially for students who think that early decision is an option for them. I think that would probably be, there are going to be a number of colleges that have early decision that want to be able to secure their class as early as possible, at least a sizable chunk of it. So I think that early decision acceptance rates might also spike a little bit too. So that was a really long-winded answer for you, Chris, but I hope that was helpful. Oh, and here's another one from Chris. I know this is really speculative, but financial stability looks to be an issue with so many colleges and universities taking a hit during the pandemic. How does an applicant consider the financial health of a school, and should they? Well, it's certainly something that you should keep in mind. And I always mention this because a lot of students and families think that they can't ask like tough questions like that, you know, when they're like talking to admissions office, because they're, you know, in essence, you're trying to impress an admissions office to accept you. But it's also a two-way street before you actually submit your application. The college is also trying to impress you enough to actually convince you to submit an application to their institution. So, I mean, I think there will be a number of schools that unfortunately won't be able to make it out the other side and be the way that they always were after this pandemic. But I think there's going to be some creative ways for people to get around it. Like I know that there was, even though it didn't have anything to do with COVID itself, but I know that there's some sort of like consortium going on here with the University of Bridgeport now with Sacred Heart, and I think a couple of other schools that I can't think of off the top of my head. Whereas they're kind of like being assimilated into those schools together. So it's something that you should certainly consider and ask about. And I think where it probably comes more into play is for some of those like really small liberal arts schools as well too, just because they have such a small enrollment. And if you're able to know what a school's endowment is, if they have a smaller endowment as well from like fundraising and whatnot, that could also play into exactly their financial stability and health.
And there's another question for you, Matt, that just came through about how Collegewise works in terms of taking on clients.
Yes. So, Anne, thank you for asking. We get pretty much anyone at any stage. The most common route for many students is that they'll enroll in our complete admissions program, which basically is we help you through the admissions experience from soup to nuts. Pretty much anything under the umbrella throughout that experience, we help you with an unlimited number of meetings and contacts throughout the time that we work together and things like that. And we help you formulate a college list, formulate some kind of a visit plan, or prep you for interviews and help you through the applications and actually submitting them as well, and then helping you make a decision. But sometimes we have many people that will come in saying, you know, we're good with everything, but we really need help writing the essay, or we need somebody else to help brainstorm an essay and work with our student through the process. We have just an essay package. Sometimes they come with an essay and they say, you know, we like this, but we just want to get your opinion on it. We do that too. And then like you mentioned, for like an hourly basis, sometimes people just want to come in virtually at this point, and just ask us a bunch of questions for an hour. Or they just have certain pieces of the application process or the experience that they want some opinion on and some guidance on, and we help with that too. So I've worked with students for as little as an hour. Sometimes they buy a number of hours, and we work together, and they're kind of like the project manager. Kind of they come to the meeting and they tell me what they want to work on. Whereas the CAP program differs from that because obviously we're working a lot more intimate with them. But also I end up being the project manager. So I kind of like am able to set the pace and kind of lay out exactly what the plan is. Okay, well, so, you know, I'll throw my my email in here as well too, into the chat box. if anyone has questions afterwards, please feel free to reach out.
Matt, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking time this Saturday to do this session for everybody. We really appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure. There's a lot. It's already a stressful process, and with all the uncertainty that goes into it, it's like skyrocketed for many families, which is completely normal. So anything that I can do to help you all to lower those stress levels just a smidge, hopefully then I've done my job.
Thank you. I also threw the link to our resource page into the chat, and I just wanted to quickly just promote a couple more college workshops we have coming up. August 8th, we have Priyanka is doing a program on what you should be working on now. And then on August 15th, we have Sharon Epstein doing a workshop on how to write your personal statement, a topic that's near and dear to your heart, Matt.
Yes, that's my favorite and least favorite time of the year, just because a lot of people also stress about that. But lots of times, especially this year, a number of my students were like, it was actually pretty painless. So if a student can get excited about something and they're happy to sit down and write it, that's the key. So, but yeah, that's definitely, those are two very, very good seminars that will be very applicable during this time of year.
So I hope lots of people will join us there. And like Matt said, we recorded this session, so we'll throw that up on the website as well for people who couldn't join us. And this was great. Thanks to everybody for joining us. And thank you again, Matt.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Everyone have a nice weekend and stay safe.
Yes, have a great weekend, everyone.